Here in the UK, the government is currently consulting on a ban on so-called conversion therapy, which could catch the ordinary work of churches, including preaching, prayer, and pastoral care, as well as infringing on the private lives of families. Speaking to me today is Pastor Murray Campbell from Melbourne in Victoria, where a similar ban is soon to come into effect. Murray, thank you for speaking to me today. Could you please briefly just explain what the ban is and why pastors like yourself are so concerned about it?
Sure. So the Victorian Parliament passed a set of laws last year, and they come into effect in a few weeks' time, actually. And there's a number of activities that are going to be prohibited under state law. In terms of churches and how it may affect churches, at the moment, preaching is not under the ban. Although the previous Attorney General has said before the Parliament that they will potentially reconsider sermons at a later date. So once the laws have come into effect and they've had a little time to work their magic, they may consider including sermons. But at the moment, that's not included. What is banned are prayers, and also conversations. And these prayers and conversations can be consensual. So if someone might approach me and say, Murray, can you pray for me? I'm struggling at the moment with my sexual godliness. And if I do so, I will be breaking the law. If someone comes to me for advice and says, for example, I'm same-sex attracted, but I love Jesus. I don't want to follow Jesus. I want to be godly with my life. Can you walk alongside me and help me and disciple me? If I do so, I will be breaking the law. And even in a Bible study setting, so you're opening with the Bible with, say, 8 other people, and maybe you're working through Romans chapter 1. And someone puts up their hand and says, actually, I now identify as gay. And if we were to continue with the Bible study on Romans chapter 1, we will be breaking the law because an individual has highlighted the fact that they identify as gay. So there are huge, significant ramifications for churches in Victoria now.
What are some of the penalties for falling foul of this conversion therapy ban?
If a serious injury has been done, then there is 10 years imprisonment. If it's deemed to be an injury, the term of imprisonment is up to 5 years. So there are criminal charges, and the lesser level of offence is a civil complaint. And that civil complaint, and even that the criminal complaints, can be made by the person or could be by a third party. It can be anonymous. And so you may well just have the police rocking up at your home door one day and saying, a complaint's been made against you. You need to come down and explain yourself. Or there is this civil process that's going to be started. And lawyers are saying that for most Christian offences, it'll probably end up with a civil tribunal where you have to show a whole lot of documentation, show us your email history, show us your sermons, and sit down and go to a class where you'll be re-educated as to what you need to think about sexual orientation and gender identity and how you are to behave and treat people. And so we got a little taste of that last year. When I was at a meeting, and the government's, from my understanding, is going to be employing an activist group, which defines itself as Christian, very progressive, and they seem to be writing material that we will have to listen to and be educated about. So, but yeah, so at the very least, a civil complaint, civil tribunal, that in itself can be a very long process and a very difficult and expensive process. Worst case scenario, it's 10 years imprisonment.
You've written quite a lot about this in your blogs, and one of the things that I found the most shocking is that it's not just when you're praying with somebody, there's also this sense that it could be illegal, or that it's certainly a legal grey area, to be praying individually about someone.
That's right. There was an information session that was organised for a group of Christian leaders a couple of months ago, and where government officials sat down and explained the law to us and what we can and cannot do. And one of the grey areas, they said, was that if you, by yourself or with a few people, are praying for another individual, and maybe you're praying that they will be godly with their sexuality, that too could possibly be a breach of the law, whether they are informed about this prayer or not.
And what other things were you told at these, for want of a better word, re-education sessions?
It was made very clear to us that no person's sexual orientation or gender identity is broken or sinful or needs to change in any way. And churches are to affirm a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. And and again, I understand this doesn't only affect churches or pastors, that the law affects every Victorian. And one of the most, I think, dangerous areas is actually for parents, where, it's becoming more common for children to be questioning their gender identity and say, I don't know if I'm a boy anymore. Maybe I'm a girl, maybe I'm something else. And so if parents say to their children, slow down, let's just wait a couple of years and see how we go, or if they try to dissuade their child of this questioning, they too are falling foul of the law and can be pulled up on charges. And so that the ramifications are broad and encompassing. But obviously there's going to be significant challenges for churches, because I think largely the laws are trying to target religious organisations.
So the ban comes into force on the 17th of February. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
What preparations are you and other pastors like yourself making in preparation for this coming into effect? Are you adapting your sermons in any way? I know you say that sermons aren't actually included in the ban, but perhaps you might be preaching on something which then invites questions from someone who might be struggling with these kind of issues, and they might want to then come and speak to you after the service, and they might be asking for prayer or whatnot. What are all the things which are going through your mind while you consider this ban?
Sure. I mean, certainly a lot of pastors have been talking about it. I mean, there are some churches that are in favour of these new laws and very supportive of them. But by and large, churches and pastors are concerned by the overreach. So we're all saying that once upon a time, there were some practices undertaken by a few religious groups that were appalling. It was only, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago that I first heard of these gay conversion practices. I had a journalist call me and say, hey, Murray, what do you think about it? And I'm thinking, what? This is awful. We don't do this. I don't know anyone who does this. So on the one hand, we're very supportive of the government saying some things are dangerous and we don't want to see them happening. But on the other hand, there are basic integral Christian practices that are now, if according to the state, against the law, such as speaking to someone, counselling someone, praying with somebody. So pastors at the moment, I think there's a bit of anger and disappointment. I think there's a lot of fear as well. What do we do? And the sense on the ground is people are scrambling at the moment to try and figure out how are we going to address these laws. So I suspect over the next few months, pastors are going to be speaking to their churches, sitting down with them and saying, this is what the law is. This is what we believe as Christians. And I can imagine pastors are going to encourage their congregations, be faithful to Jesus, be faithful to the gospel. The gospel is good news, and how can we betray the one who died for us? So I think there's going to be a lot of gentle encouragement, stick with Jesus. I think there's going to be a conversation saying, let's also be wise. So there are some things that we're very happy to say, we don't do that, we don't agree with that. But also we want to be wise in how we speak with people. I don't want Christians saying, well, I'm not going to approach these subjects anymore. I don't see how that's going to be an option for us. But I think we can wisely and gently and kindly give a reason for the hope that we do have as Christians. And so what's that going to look like for each person? Everyone's going to have to figure that out for themselves. But I suspect, there's going to be a lot of conversations in the next couple of months.
So it's obviously very concerning, not just for pastors and for Christians, but also everyone in Victoria, really, because you might well have other people who don't agree with these kind of these lifestyles and these different worldviews, and they might want to, different parents might want to raise their children in different ways and tell them what's important to them and their way of life. And that could fall on the wrong side of the ban as well. So how would you try to encourage people to speak out against such a ban, maybe try to get it overturned in Victoria? And how do you go about doing that in a winsome and effective way?
There's always the occasional voice, isn't it, that's very aggressive and angry, and it doesn't help the cause of Christ whatsoever. So we don't want to be like that. I think when I've been writing some articles, I've done that just to make people aware that this issue is real. It is going to affect churches. It's going to affect families, and it's also going to harm people that we want to love. If someone, again, is same-sex attracted and they say, I live a godly life, it is against the law for us to help them. That is going to cause untold harm to lots of Victorians who are not Christians, to those who are Christians. So the ramifications, are enormous. But so I've been trying to make people aware of the issues. But I think if we choose to speak, be faithful to Jesus. Be faithful to Jesus. Be kind in our words. Be truthful. Don't exaggerate. When and where churches have done the wrong thing, just call it out. Say, yep, that is wrong. That is sinful. We do oppose that. And so be holistic in our storytelling, and be, I think, gentle advocates for Christ and for the common good.
And finally, do you have any kind of message for those of us in the UK who might be fearful that a similar ban might come into effect here?
What I've been thinking of recently are Paul's words to Timothy. So Paul is someone who understood what injustice was, and he was often treated poorly. And he's writing to Timothy, and he's in prison. People have deserted him. People have betrayed him, and you just listen not only to the words that Paul says, but just the tone in which he conveys his situation and his love for people and his love for the gospel. But as he's writing to Timothy, he says to Timothy, don't give up. We don't need to give up the gospel. He says, preach the word, be prepared in season, out of season. So I guess my encouragement is be prepared. Stand firm on the gospel, and do so with all the grace and the love and the gentleness that God has shown us in Christ Jesus. And sometimes when we do that, we just got to leave the end results with God. And sometimes there is a cost attached to that. Jesus tells us that there is a cost in following him. And I think for many of us, certainly in Australia, there's been very little cost, but perhaps, that's slowly changing. So don't give up on the gospel, and don't give up on loving people. The reason we share the gospel and we talk about Jesus and about God's design for life and the world is because we love people and we love God. It's not because we hate them and despise them. So let our conversation ooze with that love and that kindness and grace toward others.
Well, Murray, this has all been very informative. Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Angus.